Today, we are going to interview one of the greatest creators and innovators of the modern watchmaking. With his brand and group of friends, MB&F, they have challenged the tradition of modern watchmaking by creating works of art. Today at Pecados Veniales, we have with us Max Büsser, its founder and creative director. Welcome, Max. A pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
For all of those who may not know you, it's quite difficult because you're one of the most famous independent watchmakers. Who is Maximilian Büsser?
The baseline of my company is a creative adult is a child who survived. So I was a very creative kid, very weird kid. I didn't have any friends because I was just weird. And then I became a very boring young man. I became an engineer, and I'm Swiss, so a Swiss engineer. It's not very big. And so because I wanted to be normal like other people. And then I fell into watchmaking a little bit by chance 30 years ago. My first job was given to me by Henri-John Belmont, the CEO of then Jaeger-LeCoultre. And so I started at Jaeger-LeCoultre as a product manager coming out of university. 7 incredible years at Jaeger, in years where nobody wanted to buy a mechanical watch or a Jaeger in those days. And then I was very lucky to land the job of head of Harry Winston timepieces when I was 31. And that company was in a really difficult situation when I inherited. I thought I'd done the biggest error of my life. 98, 99, horrible years for me. I've got a massive ulcer. It was really horrible. But we saved that company. And then we took it, we took it from $8 to $80 million. We created Opus. We created the factory. I think we can say that we put the watch brand on the map as much as the jewelry brand existed. And while all this was happening, I should have been the happiest of men. But the more success I had, the more money I was making, the more my face was in newspapers, the less I was enjoying myself. And I didn't understand why. And it took a few sessions of psychotherapy because of my dad passing away to realize that I believe the most important day of my life will be the last one. It's the day I want to be able to look back and be proud of what I've done in my life. Maybe it's going to be in 40 years, maybe it's going to be tomorrow, but I want to be proud. And from there onwards, I completely changed my life. Not my life, I changed my professional life. And I realized that I was an artist as a kid and I'd sold out, I'd become a marketeer. And therefore I wanted to be an artist again. I wanted to create kinetic sculptures. And I didn't want to look at the market ever again. I didn't want to look at trends, the clients, market, anything. And the other thing I realized is that my parents were probably the most honest and respectful people I've ever met. And in business, there's not a lot of honesty and respect, unfortunately. And I said, look, I want to abide by the same values that I have in my personal life, the same as my parents in my professional life. And that's when I created my company and called it Maximilian Büsser and Friends, which actually means, and people who share the same values, the same enthusiasm, the same honesty. And that's what I started doing in 2005. 16 years later, we'll come out in autumn with our 20th caliber, 20th movement, which is mind-boggling. No brand has come out in 16 years with 20 calibers. I'm talking of really new calibers, not just taking a round movement and modifying something on it. And it's, wow. Who am I? I'm a grateful man. I'm a happy man. I'm a blessed person because when you see where I come from and the childhood I had, nothing was supposed to turn out the way it did. So I'm very happy.
What did it mean to you to learn Harry Winston's rare timepieces Opus project?
It's interesting because I am credited today with some sort of groundbreaking, earth-shattering concept called Opus. But when I created it, He was only there to help a friend. Basel 2000, I have dinner 3 times with François Paul Jaune, FP Jaune, who is launching his brand and has a lot of difficulty to explain and convince people to take on his brand. This is 20 years ago. And he's telling me, like, nobody understands what I'm doing. Nobody knows who I am. I can't talk about what I used to do, because what I used to do, I signed contracts saying I'm not allowed to talk about it. And the last day, practically last day, we're walking down from hall 1-1 to hall 1 on the escalator. And I say, you know what? We should do something together. Harry Winston and FP Jaune, I haven't signed any NDA contract. I can talk about it. So, because he signed them, I didn't. So we laughed and he said, oh, okay, let's do that. And that's how it started. To help François Paul to get more visibility. And of course, in my mind, to be able to have access to his beautiful movements, because Harry Winston, rare timepieces was rare diamonds, rare movements. Rare diamonds made sense. It was Harry Winston diamonds. Rare movements was the whole work we had been starting to do, creating these incredible movements for a jeweler, because jewelers didn't used to make complicated watches in those days. Jewelers used to make quartz or simple 2-hand or 3-hand watches. And I had this ambition of creating the greatest movements with the greatest jeweler. And then it started, and it took a life of its own. I created Opus 1 to 5 and left. And then my successors took it to, I think it's Opus 14 or something like that now. And I think what was interesting is it's a perfect win-win. And that's what I built my company MB&F on. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yes.
And it's not a great marketing concept. It's a great human concept. That was the beginning of Opus. It's the beginning of my next project called MB&F, which is not only about crediting the master watchmaker, it's crediting everybody. Now, just to give a little example, because a lot of people amalgamate Opus and MB&F, they're very different. Opus was me at Harry Winston going to see independent watchmakers and saying, dude, what do you have? Do you have a good idea? And you're like, oh, wait a minute. I've got this. What do you think of this? Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. While MB&F, they're all my ideas. All of them, except for the perpetual calendar by Stephen McDonald. So out of 20 calibers, they're 19 times my idea. And then I find all the incredible talent to transform that crazy idea into reality. So the creative process between Opus and MB&F is very different, even though they seem similar.
Max, you are like the image of the brand, but who is behind the project MB&F? There are a lot of people connected and related with the project, isn't it?
So, of course, when I started the company, I was all alone in my flat for 2.5 years without a salary. That was 2005 to 2007. And of course, from that beginning, I needed all the friends, which are all the engineers, artisans, watchmakers, but also the people who write the press kit, to take the photos. So every single person, which is the ecosystem of a brand, which was subcontracted. Now, 16 years later, we're 31 in the company. Out of them, 5 research and development engineers developing all the movements in-house. Of course, all the watchmakers, many years we've had that. We've got CNC machines where we machine probably 75% of all our cases and about 20-25% of all our components. But we still work with a lot of people out there. So any given project will use the resources of a minimum of 50 to 60 people. Why? Because we're artisans. Because if you're a big brand, it's way more people or way more machines often. But in this case, and that's what I love in artisanal watchmaking. It's all about human beings. Mm-hmm. It's all about a talented person will make the difference. It's not about a system. It's not about ISO 9001. It's not about processes. It's just about human beings with talent, which you bring together over a crazy idea. And over 4 years, 4 years to make something like this, to develop it and make it, you will get an incredible piece in your hand. It's like a 4-year gestation, a 4-year birth. And there are a lot of fathers and a lot of mothers, and you have one child coming out.
And do you feel completely free creating your watches? And what? I feel free. And very important. Very important. What do your watchmakers think about your ideas?
So that's the point. I feel free because I have all these ideas. I mean, who creates a watch which looks like an airplane rather than a car or a spaceship or even a bulldog? But then we have reality. And reality is the insane engineering and watchmaking which goes into it. So there is often the ideal project, which is design, comes out of my mind. And then you have the reality of what we can actually do.
Yeah.
We have increased our competence insanely over 16 years. I mean, what we're capable of doing today, we could have never done 10, 15 years ago. So that's also because 20 calibers, you learn and you add. It adds the competence. I am completely free of two things. The first is I never care what people think. I never care what the market. That I'm totally free. And I'm free financially, because even though we're crazy and we created 20 calibers, we've got a business model which has never lost any money. It's never made any money, but it's never lost any money. So it basically
very important. Yeah.
We know that a caliber will cost X million, and I don't care if it costs 500,000 more or less. We just create what is the most beautiful, the best, what we'll be most proud of. You know what the defining factor of MB&F is? Pride. Everything we do is to achieve pride, and there is no price for that. That's priceless. So yeah, I'm free of that. I'm not free of technical development issues. I'm not free of human issues. It took incredible energy to create the team of 30 people, and some were not the right people. I had to let them go over the years and find others who had the same or better competencies. But the point is, we just don't want only competent people. We want competent people and nice people. And I don't think any company will ever tell you that. We only hire nice people. And that is very important for me.
Don't you think, Ramon, tell us. Okay, don't you think there's very little innovation in traditional brand at the moment? Where do you think the future innovation will come from?
Clearly today, we've got a bipolar industry. On one hand, the mega brands, which are incredibly successful and incredibly good at what they do, usually having an icon and multiplying it. And they've got a business model which is very anti-creative. De facto, even if they want to create, it's very difficult for them because they need to talk to very wide audiences. And so it's complicated to be very polarizing when you want to appeal to a lot of people. And often they've got another issue, is that they're imprisoned by their icons. And when you've got one watch which does 50 or 98% of your business, it's complicated to come out with something new next to it. But there are solutions to that. I'm not sure they know them, but there are solutions to that. And on the other hand, on the polarization, you've got the small independents, the artisans, who don't do this because they think there's money in it, because there is no money when you're a small artisan. It's a very risky, high risk business and a very capital intensive business. And all of my colleagues, they do what they do because it's their life, because it's their way of expressing themselves, because they don't know how to do anything else. They basically created a company because they didn't know what else to do. And never because they thought, oh, there's a great business here. And yes, of course, there are people who want to buy my watches. No, of course not. And that's where innovation comes, because it's small artisans are creative centric and big brands are market centric. And so, yeah, I think the solution to that is what Silicon Valley has done, what the pharmaceutical companies have done, is actually for the big boys to go and tap into the small artisans and to ask them to do things for them and do collaborations or buy them or whatever. And that's not happening in the watch industry, but it actually would help them to have the guts to come and see us and say, let's do a collaboration. And you know why? Because there is no lose for a big brand which does a collaboration with a small creator. Mm-hmm. If it's a success, the big brand will take all the laurels and say, we did it. And if it's a flop, it's the fault of the small independent. He's too out there, he's too extreme, and of course it didn't work. So it's never the fault of the brand. And I think if I were a big brand, I can tell you one thing, I would be sitting on everybody of these independents workshops going, dude, let's do something together.
But I think that the problem is that those big brands are not going, in those moments of the market, they are not going to risk anything. And every time we talk with collectors and watch aficionados, we are saying that independent brands are closer to the clients, to the market. And also those kind of brands like yours, Urberg, Moser, Kaributilainen, those that are a kind of pieces of art. It's not just a watch. You are not only looking for the time, you are looking for something else.
Well, we are talking about artisans. Yeah.
And art, because, and that's one of the many most important reasons I created MB&F, is for me, watchmaking is art. If it's art, why are all the watches looking the same? Yeah. I mean, and the same for a very long time. And so if it's art, let's deconstruct it and reconstruct it into, I mean, the Impressionists came at some point, the contemporary art came at some point. You can like it or not like it.
But it's different.
Art has an attitude, and you have to take risk. And art exists by rebelling against the previous current. And there is no more rebellion now. Because if you want to please customers, you're not rebelling, you're not taking risks. And I'm not even talking of the quality of your product, that's a whole other discussion. But you need to have a strong attitude. It can be a Kaributilainen with a very classic product, and it could be Urwerk with a completely super contemporary product. But both have a strong attitude and are not following the market.
Max, you are a brand born in this century, 2005. Then how do you want to evolve the company? How do you see it in the next decade?
Yeah. I was a youngster who needed a lot of certainties, meaning because I had very little self-assurance and even self-respect, I needed certainties to build myself. And Harry Winston, then MB&F, allowed me to realize that the greatest luxury, one of the many luxuries in life, is to let go of certainties, is not to know what you're going to do next. I have no idea what stupid or crazy idea I'm going to have in 5 minutes. And that crazy or stupid or great idea is going to bring my life here and maybe there and there. And I love the fact I am totally clueless and have no idea what the hell is going to happen. So don't get me wrong. You don't have a company with 31 employees, 20 calibers, 7 calibers in the pipeline without knowing what's going to happen in the next 5 years. We know more or less what's going to happen in the next 5 years, but I don't know what I'm going to create tomorrow, which will happen in 6 or 7 years. And you're going to see some pretty amazing ideas coming to life this year. One is going to knock your socks off. Actually, 2 will probably knock your socks off. Well, maybe 3 will even knock your socks off. And but they were all ideas which came at different times of my life. and are happening now. If you would have told me 16 years ago I was going to create a round watch, I would have told you never, ever.
In my life.
Alas, no, exactly. No more round watches. They're for losers.
I love it. I love it. Come on.
So, but now, of course, I've done 8 legacy machines. If you told me I was going to create an art gallery, I was like, what drugs are you taking? Change the drugs, not good drugs, and etc., etc. So if you told me I was going to create a watch for ladies, I was like, never, ever. This is my brand about me. And then I created the flying T. So the only thing I realize is whatever certainties I have, they always end up being dynamited. So I have no idea where this brand is going to go. The only thing I can tell you is that it's going to follow me. And the way I evolved, the way I think now, when I created the brand, I was divorced, I had no children, and I was a workaholic working 18 hours a day. And that was my life. I loved it. Now I've got 2 daughters, 8 and 4, and I moved to Dubai practically 7 years ago, and I work from home. Well before COVID, I've been working from home. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when they come back from school, I stop working. I don't touch a computer, a phone, or anything till 8:30, and spend those 4.5 hours with them. And then when they're at bed, I'll start working maybe again or not. Now, you would have told me that. I was like, what? No way, that's not who I am. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And so we'll see. You will see. I will see. I have no idea.
And we were talking about the difference between companies like yours and the great names of the industry. Have you ever been asked by a large group to buy a stake of your company?
Actually, it just happened a few months ago.
Sure.
And we very politely said no. But it never happened before. I was getting very upset. I was like, why doesn't anybody want to? I don't want to sell at all, but I'm very upset that nobody's asking to give me any money. No, it didn't happen. I think we scare the hell out of too many big groups. We're too fiercely independent, crazy, out there, outspoken. I mean, imagine the interview I'm giving you now if I was working in a big brand.
Impossible.
I would have been fired in the first 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And so but again, coming back to what I was saying, I think big groups, big brands need to go and tap into the creativity of the small guys. They should actually consider, I'm not saying buying us, but they should consider cross-pollinizing what they're doing. Yeah, so that's my honest answer.
Tell us about your pieces, legacy machine and performance art collections.
Okay. Now let's
introduce us.
We've got four columns. Again, when I started, there was just horological machines. Then we created legacy machines. Very different animals. Clearly, I mean, you can see one is something like that, and the other is a round watch. Now, there you go. Even though it's pretty cool. And so horological machines are come from my guts. They're my psychotherapy. They're revisiting my life, my childhood, my craziness, whatever. They have absolutely no anchor in history. They're absolutely pure creativity. Legacy machines are a tribute. They're my way of saying thank you to the great watchmakers of the 18th and 19th century, which were the great inventors of our lives. And therefore, they come more from here. And they're more pragmatic, and they thought. So one is looking forward, the other one is looking backwards, even though it's still with a twist. And so it's a different way of seeing things. And then arrived performance machines. Performance art, sorry, getting confused myself. Performance art. And that's when I actually sat down the first time with Alain Silberstein in 2008. And I ended up in an event in Singapore, and he was there, and I'd never met him, and I was an enormous fan of his work, enormous fan. And I was like this fanboy, like, oh, Mr. Silberstein, I'm so happy to meet you. And And he was really cool. And at the end of the dinner, I said, would you accept to redesign one of my pieces? And he was like, what? I said, yeah. There was only HM1, 2, and there was actually only HM1 and 2 in those days. And I said, so you take an HM1, you take an HM2, redesign it. And that's when he came out with a sketch of what was going to become the black box, of which we did 8 pieces. And that's the first time I gave one of my babies to somebody I admire, a designer, a creator, a watchmaker, you name it. And he will, or she will actually modify it. And then there's a 4th pillar, which is co-creations. When we opened our first Mad Gallery in Geneva 10 years ago, I had the idea of creating other 3D kinetic art pieces which were not watches. So I went to see Rouge, the music box makers, L'Épée, the clock makers, Carandache, the pen makers, with our crazy ideas. And we give them our ideas, but they R&D, manufacture, and sell them. So that's the 4th pillar. A lot of different pillars, and there'll be a 5th pillar you're going to see this year, which I can't tell you yet, which will be something which I think will amaze a lot of people again. So, you know, as a creator, I get my adrenaline from taking risks. I get my adrenaline from getting out of my comfort zone. Doing what the big brands do, like when you look at the amount of creations we've done, everyone could be a brand de facto, sort of, and then just taking it and modifying it and changing a dial and whatever, it wouldn't make me happy. It would just make me sad. So for me, it always works on how do I take a risk, and that's what you see in the last 16 years, and you're going to see going forward.
Just one question. I have heard you several times talking about how Caribou Delining changed the MB&F company. What did it mean to you to work with Cari? Because we know quite well Cari, because we had a long time ago a shop here in Madrid devoted to independent watchmakers, and we know quite well Cari. And also to collaborate with another brand like Moser. And are you thinking about doing more things together with other brands?
Look, the whole point of a collaboration is that you should work with somebody who's different from you. Because if you're going to collaborate with somebody who's like you, it's incestuous. It doesn't bring, the kid is not very nice. So you want, my mom was Indian, my dad was Swiss. I think that's one of the lucks I had in life, of having 2 completely different worlds. And I believe in collaboration, that we should work with people who are different and bring you something. Of course, Cari brought us to an insane level of hand finishing. There's the before Cari and after Cari at MB&F. So Legacy Machine 1 in 2011 is going to set a new benchmark, which was our benchmark now in everything we do. And he basically said, this is how you do it, otherwise you don't get my name on your product. And I was like, sir, we'll do it. And he brought us to a complete different level, and we're very proud of it. Moser is a great example. I love what these guys do. I mean, they took this very classic, boring, round watch brand, which was in great difficulty, and they made it cool. And they had great ideas, and I've got great admiration for what they've done. And I was having lunch with Edward and Bertrand Mellon 3 years ago, and I said, we should do something together. I love your Fumet dials. Do you want to do a collab together? And Edward looked at me and he said, yeah, sure, I would love to. But what are you going to do for us? I was like, what? So what do you mean? He said, yeah, I'm giving you my Fumet dials. What are you doing for me? So I was like, I don't know. I mean, you've got a classic watch brand. You've seen my crazy watch brand. I mean, do you think we can actually meet? He said, I don't know. Try. Suggest something to me. And so for 6 months, I was scratching my head and like, what can we do? And it was before Flying T came out. So one day I called up Edward because, you know, he's in Schaffhausen. And I'm in Dubai, even though I'm pretty often in Geneva, but Schaffhausen in Dubai is like 4 hours drive. I said, are you any time in Geneva? And he said, yeah, I'm going to catch a plane, I don't know, in the next week or whatever. I said, okay, I'll see you at the airport. So we caught up at the Montreux Jazz Cafe at the airport, and I showed him the prototype of the Flying T. And I said, this is going to come out in 8 months or something like that. Would you be courageous enough to put a dial like this on one of your pieces? And I'll give you the whole technology. I mean, everything we've developed with all the conical gears, we're the only watch brand in the world to do that. We'll give it to you. And you went like, cool, let's do this. So you see, it's all about human beings. Around the coffee, the first time was a coffee in Dubai, a lunch in Dubai. The second time was a coffee in the airport. And it happens. And then he came back to me and he said, would you like my double spiral? Like, of course I want your double spiral. You never gave it to anybody. Of course I want you to. I said, okay, you can have my double spiral. He said, but can I have your cylindrical spiral from the Thunderdome? I'm like, yeah, sure. Especially as Moser has been doing all our spirals for the last 10 years. As most people don't know. All the integrated movements we do are with Moser spirals. And so the cylindrical hairspring sorry, that spiral is French. Hairspring we done for the Thunderdome, what they'd done for us. He could integrate it. So it became a story of human beings, a story of brands, a story of creativity, and a story of hairsprings. And this all happened through coffees, lunches. That's how it, not marketing driven meetings going, guys, how are we going to create a brand which is going to blow people away? That's not how it works.
The good things in life.
It's better.
Put the people together.
Both of us trying to create a product we really would love. And it worked.
And it's better a coffee than a PowerPoint, of course.
Every day. That's like COVID. That's a big problem for me the last year.
Yeah.
Not being able to sit down with people. Yeah. I mean, Zooms are cool, but we don't relate. Actually, I've created very little in the last year. Not only because of that, also because I create only when I'm all alone and I am not working and not in link with anybody. So up till then, I would always find every 3-4 days an hour and put myself in the garden and don't have this damn thing with me and just sit. I would block myself an hour in the garden. Nobody could disturb me. And you just sit on a chair for an hour. When was the last time you did that? Sit on a chair for an hour. 60 minutes can be a really long time when you've got nothing to do. And then you think, and you let your mind roam, and you let, maybe it could be family, business, a new product, an idea, a regret. I don't know, you just let it roam. And I would do that every once or twice a week. And I created so much in the first 5 years of Dubai. And then COVID hit, and I'm friggin' in Zooms all the time. And when I'm not in Zooms, I want to spend time with my family. And I haven't given myself that luxury of an hour because I feel guilty. I'm not spending enough time with the family. I'm not spending enough time with my company. And so, yeah, I've created, look, I say I've created much less. I created 2 completely new concepts last year. But for me, it's much less than usual.
Hey, Max, could you tell us something about your new LMX?
So LMX is something very amazing which is happening to me. Is that for 15 years, I was always creating going forward. And now there's a body of work, soon 20 calibers. That's an enormous amount of body of work. Most big brands don't have half of that. And now you start having anniversaries. And so there's this fun moment in my life, which I never thought I would do, is when I revisit something I did 10 years ago. And I've never done that at MB&F. So it started with the Frog X in Sapphire in November last year. The LMX now in March. And so it's a completely different creative process. It's taking a product which you loved doing 10 years ago and rethinking it the way you are today. With all the ideas and experience I've accumulated and what I want to do, I take my LM1 and I create it the way I would like it today. Don't get me wrong, I love my LM1. But today I wanted way more 3D. So we basically pumped it on steroids. So we put 3 barrels instead of 1. So we've got 7 days power reserve instead of 45 hours. We put everything in 3D. The dials, we've got the minute wheels of both time zones we brought from underneath on top, and they're on these beautiful Voutilainen-like bridges. Of course, the escapement in front. We created the very first 3D power reserve indicator. So we're like, what can we do even crazier than that? And we do the very first gyrating power reserve indicator. So not only is it vertical, but you decide where you want it on your dial. And so it's a very different creative process, which I enjoy a lot. And you're going to see more X's coming out in the future, because it's really fun to go back to your old creations and say, okay, now let's make it like that. So that's adding another layer on top of all we've said: horological machines, legacy machines, performance art, co-creations. Now we've got the X's, and then you're going to see something else and something else. And I've got 42 projects in the pipeline as we talk. 42 projects. That's a lot for a single human being with a small team of 30 people. But that's what makes me happy.
Great.
3 questions. Who are your customers profile? Second, do you think Max Büsser and Friends is enough known in the Spanish market? And the third question is, where can buy your watches in Spain?
Okay, we've got 3 questions. First one, who are our customers? I discovered, when I started MB&F, I didn't know any customer. At Harry Winston, we were very much a wholesale company. So we were selling 4,000, 5,000 watches a year. I didn't know my customers. So when I started meeting people who were crazy enough to love and buy my pieces. And they became, many of them, very good friends. Today, I think we've delivered about 2,700 MB&F in 16 years. And I think it's about 900 to 1,000 clients. I know about 500 of them from all over the world. So interestingly enough, they're all over the world. Today, it's 1/3 Asia, 1/3 America, and 1/3 Europe, Middle East. And what is really interesting is that if they're from Taiwan, from Los Angeles, from Madrid, or from Dubai, they're the same people. Meaning, they don't have the same upbringing, the same religion, the same race, the same education, but they're all the same people. They're usually entrepreneurs. Most of my clients have got their own companies. They are incredibly self-asserted individuals. You know, the luxury world, and I hate the word luxury, but let's say the high-end world thrives on people who need to show off. And our customers are the complete other polarization from them. They don't care at all. Because the people who want to show off, they want 3 things. They want everybody to know what they're wearing. They want everybody to know the price. And they want everybody to be jealous. That's how showing off works. When you wear this, even though everybody's looking at it and people in cafes come up to you and go, excuse me, but what is that? Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows the price. And usually when they discover the price, they say, are you stupid? Why didn't you buy a Patek or Richard Mille instead? And so that's what my customers get all the time. And they just shrug and laugh and say, yeah, right. And so the MB&F customer is a very self-asserted human being who doesn't want to be like everybody else, doesn't want to show off. He or she knows exactly who they are. Exactly like me today. They don't care what other people think, exactly like me today. And they buy what they love. And 50% of the reason of getting an MB&F is the story of why we do what we do, and 50% is the product itself. So that's what I've seen over all my traveling around the world and meeting the customers. Now let's come down to Spain. Unfortunately, up till very recently, we didn't have any Spanish clients, and nobody knew about us in Spain except for very few geeks. And I love geeks. I'm a geek. So our MB&F customers are geeks. And now
That's what I am. That's what I am.
Geeks are my family. And
thank you.
And so thank you. And so now we've opened with Rabat, and who had the courage to come and see us. Was it before COVID? Yeah, it was before COVID.
Yeah, before, yeah.
He was actually the only new account we opened in the last 2 years, because we're cutting down retailers everywhere. We had at some point we had 45 retailers. Now we're down to 25, and we're going to cut more and more and more, because every year the sales of our products are between 20 and 25% higher than our production. And so what happens is that we have to concentrate. And so there we go. So we're happy to work with Jordi, and to finally have somebody to represent MB&F. He doesn't have many pieces like most of our retail partners. I probably has 3 or 4, if that. And every new product he's getting is pre-sold. He got his Evo Perpetual and he sold it before he got it. He hasn't got his LMX, but I think he's already pre-sold it. And he gets 1 piece of every of our novelty. So yeah, it's incredible when I think about it. When I look at where I was 16 years ago, going, please, please, please buy my product, please, please, please on the side of the road. And now we basically just say, sorry, we can't. Our customers don't buy to sell.
Yeah.
The danger of getting into the premium world is that you attract a different type of customer. And when you start getting into premiums, meaning you can sell with a profit the watch you manage to get at full retail, you attract 10 times more customers, but they're not the customers who like your product. They're customers who like money. And I'm incredibly scared of that, because we're getting there, and now we have to be incredibly careful that the people who actually love what we do get them, and not the people who want to sell them with a profit. It's a new issue we're dealing with now.
Mm-hmm. Max, time is coming, and we have to finish the interview with thank you so much for being so kind to be with us at Pecados Veniales. It has been a pleasure. Whenever you come to Spain, to Madrid, it will be a pleasure to have you again with us. And congratulations for what you have done and what you have reached.
Thank you so much. And we wouldn't exist without people like yourself, not because you own one, of course, because you own one, but because you're interested in what we do. We have no money to advertise, no money to market. MB&F has created itself purely on crazy creativity and word of mouth. So thank you to all of you guys who spread the word, because we wouldn't be where we are without you guys. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Yes.